Bedouin tradition, someone is allowed to stay in your home for 3 days and 3 nights before you can question why they're staying there and when they will leave? Hello, my name is Rana Nejem and I'm author of When in the Arab World, an insider's guide to living and working with Arab culture. One thing that I believe every foreigner visiting this part of the world would agree on is how warm and welcoming and hospitable the culture is. Hospitality is an Arab and Muslim tradition that is deeply ingrained in the culture. Visitors are treated like kings and must always be fed and looked after. The guest is always given the best of whatever is available. Food is, of course, central to Arab hospitality, and the guest must be served generously. And no matter how full you are, you still have to eat. The table is laid out with a very generous variety and quantity of dishes. I know that some foreigners find this offensive in some way and think that it is wasteful. But let me assure you that food is never thrown away. There are always plenty of people to feed, either domestic staff, or the caretaker in the building across the street, or the man who washes the cars. Nothing ever gets thrown out. The amount and variety of food must be generous to show honor and respect for the guest. That is why our Arabs are sometimes surprised when they're invited to a foreigner's home and only 1 or 2 main dishes are served and the amount is just enough for the people at the table. Now, of course, we understand the cultural differences. However, an Arab would like to be received with the same level of generosity he's accustomed to giving his own guests. Oh, and another thing, you should also offer your Arab guests a second helping at least 3 times, as most Arabs are taught that it would be impolite to accept food from the first time. I know it sounds strange for someone from Western European culture, for example. There, if you go to someone's house and they offer you food and you say, "No, thank you, I'm not hungry," they will not give you any food. It's quite simple and straightforward. But in this part of the world, we're brought up in such a way that it is not polite to accept food from the first time. There's so many stories of young Arab students, like Rami, for example, who was studying in Australia. He was invited to a friend's home, and when they offered him food, of course, being brought up to be very polite, he would say, "Thank you, I'm fine," even though he would be genuinely hungry. So they would say, of course, "Okay," and that would be the end of it. So if you are invited for a dinner at someone's home, the evening would start with a lot of socializing and small talk over drinks. Depending on the host, it might be just juices and soft drinks, or alcohol may be served. All this is before the meal. The food is usually served quite late, around 10 or even 11 p.m. in the summer, and the evening comes to an end fairly quickly after the meal. A lot of my American and British friends struggled with this when they first came here. They would be invited to someone's home, and in the beginning they couldn't understand why they were not being fed, and then they couldn't understand why nobody sat around afterwards to digest and talk. Where food sits in the sequence of an evening really differs from one culture to the other. As I mentioned before, the host will look after the guest and will make sure that the guest is offered the most prized and delicious pieces of the meal. So do try not to decline what is offered to you, even if you don't think it looks very appetizing. And when you're full, you can leave a little bit of food on your plate. Otherwise, chances are that it will be filled again with more food. Being invited to someone's home in the Arab world is a big deal. I hope you get the chance to enjoy that experience. Salam.